Welcome to this getting started video on the Martin P3 system controller software. My name is Wouter.
And I'm Bjorn.
And in this video you will learn the basics on how to work with the Martin P3 system controller software. So let's first look at how you connect it all together. Looking at the system diagram, the first thing you connect to the P3 controller is keyboard, monitor and mouse. On the back of the unit you'll find USB ports for keyboard and mouse and a display port output for the local monitor. This port is of course compatible with adapters to DVI or HDMI if you want to connect such a monitor. Once you've connected your keyboard, monitor and mouse to the P3, it's time to start connecting your fixtures to the P3. On the back of the unit you'll find a dedicated P3 output port. This is where you start connecting all your P3 enabled lighting fixtures. In most applications we recommend to use a network switch between the P3 controller and the P3 fixtures, as that enables you to split out your network into multiple branches. This network switch for P3 to work needs to be supporting gigabit speeds, and we highly recommend the use of an unmanaged switch so you can avoid any mistakes in the configuration of the switch. So you just connect all the fixtures on the network to the P3 output and then they will automatically be discovered in the software later on. So once all the fixtures are connected, the next thing you can connect is your lighting console or lighting controller or DMX playback device. For this, the P3 has a dedicated network port supporting ArtNet or streaming ACN, connecting that source to the P3 controller. Alternatively, you can also connect a video input source, so this could be a media server, media player, signage player, some VJ software. For this, the P3 controllers have an HDMI input port and an NDI network port for networked video. So you can actually choose if you want to control the fixtures with DMX through the P3 or with video to the P3. But also possible is connecting both of them at the same time, as this will enable you to run the fixtures with DMX for one queue and with video for some other queues. So this gives you the maximum of flexibility if you connect both types of sources at the same time. So once you've connected your system and started the P3 controller, the first thing you will do is create a new show file. For this you go in the File menu and hit New to create a new configuration. Let's call this one Training. And then the first question you're asked is the configuration mode. So the P3 controller supports 3 different configuration modes: Real World, 1:1 and Freescale. The differences are explained here in the window as well, but I'll give you a quick introduction. So Real World allows you to mix and match products with different pixel pitches, and then the P3 will scale them accordingly so that in the real world the video content looks the same size despite products having different pixel pitches internally. 1:1 disables all kind of scaling on the P3 controller itself, so every fixture is mapped 1-to-1 on the workspace. So if you mix products with different resolutions, you will need to compensate for that in the content which you send into the P3. And then Freescale allows you to freely scale the entire workspace to any size you need, so it also allows you to upscale the video input to match a really big setup or a really big canvas of fixtures. On 1:1 and Freescale mode we have dedicated videos explaining you how to get them up and running and what the specifics are. But for this basic introduction, let's stick to Real World. So once you've chosen Real World, you need to select the pixel pitch of the finest product you will be using. So for example, if you're doing a show with some video Skeptron with a 10mm pixel pitch and some video Fatron with a 20mm pixel pitch, you choose the smallest one of the two, which would be the 10mm, and then you can mix those two products together. So once you've chosen a pixel pitch here, any product with a pixel pitch larger than this will be supported. Anything with a pixel pitch smaller than this will not be supported in this show file. Once you've selected your pixel pitch, you need to define the size of your workspace. I would like to do this in millimeter, and for this example my stage is 8 meters wide and 4 meters high. And now here in the bottom he gives me a summary of what he's going to create: a workspace with a pixel pitch of 10mm, 800 by 400 pixels or 8 by 4 meters. It's now created and you now see the workspace, which is the light gray area here in the middle. That's my stage of 8 by 4 meters. So now you've created a new show file. Two things to remember here. On the P3 controller, you don't need to save anything you're doing. The P3 is continuously saving anything you do on the controller, so there's no explicit save button. In the file menu, you will, however, find two save buttons if you want to either save a backup, so this enables you to save a backup to something like a USB stick, but stay in the current show file. And we also have Save As, so that's if you want to make a new revision of your project. When you hit Save As, you can save it under a new name and immediately open the show file with that new name. So these are just if you want to continue in a different file. But in the basics, the P3 is saving continuously any change you make on your show file, so no need to save as you go. So before diving deeper into the software, let's have a quick look at the different views of the P3 software. The first view is the setup view. This is where you map all your fixtures onto the workspace and you also address them at the same time. This is where you spend most of the time on the P3 controller mapping fixtures out on the workspace. The second view is the video input view. This is where you select your video source that's coming into the P3. Then you can tweak the image parameters, apply scaling and cropping to the image to make sure your video input maps correctly to the fixtures you've just laid out in setup view. The third main view is the DMX and motion view. This is where you patch DMX controls, which could be ArtNet and streaming ACN as well, obviously, to the various fixtures. Here it's important to realize that all the fixtures you control via the P3, you have two options. Either you map them to video, but not control them by DMX, or you can also just control them by DMX and not care about the video. So you can kind of choose, like, you want it driven by a lighting disk or driven from a video program. If you do both, if you map it out on the video and patch it to DMX controls, you actually have the best of both worlds, because now on a Q by Q basis you can control the fixtures. Now we get to the more advanced views. Each of those is not covered in this video, but in dedicated training videos. We have the color targets, where you can change the color space in which a fixture performs, which is really useful when working with cameras, so you can tweak the color performance of any P3 driven fixture. We have edge compensation. This allows you to tweak the edges of fixtures to have a seamless blend when fixtures are placed right next to each other. Fixture adjuster is our recalibration tool to recalibrate fixtures in the field. And then thermal throttling is for specific architectural installations where fixtures are getting really, really warm, and using thermal throttling they can automatically dim down instead of overheating and still keep performing at their best. But once again, all these advanced views are covered in dedicated training videos. The last view is the video input view, the live view. This is where you typically have the P3 controller when you're done with the setup and the show is just running. So in the live view, you can monitor incoming video mapped onto the fixtures. You can trigger presets but not modify them, and you have a logging screen here where you see fixtures that drop off the network, are added to the network, fixtures that are overheating, fixtures that have errors, warnings are all shown here in the logging view. So live view is the perfect view to be when your show is running. So the first thing you do on a P3 controller after creating the show file is mapping the fixtures onto the workspace. To do this, the P3 offers 4 methods to map fixtures onto the workspace. The first one is taking fixtures from the library onto the workspace and then linking them with physical fixtures afterwards. We'll cover this right away. The second method of mapping fixtures on the workspace is just grabbing them directly from Discover devices. So this is the case where you already have the fixtures connected and just start dragging them onto the workspace. We'll also explain that in the video today. The third method to put fixtures on the workspace is the layout wizard, which is available here. This is a great tool for building a wall of fixtures, because it basically allows you to determine the width and the height of the wall, and it will just number the fixtures as you decide to do so. The layout wizard is covered in a dedicated advanced training video. The last method to map fixtures onto the workspace is via an MVR import. So an MVR file can be created in a CAD software, visualizer software, a lighting console, contains all the mapping and patch data, and then you can just import the MVR file into the P3, and all the fixtures will be mapped onto your workspace automatically without needing to do any manual mapping. So that's an MVR import. This is covered in an advanced video on how to do MVR import into the P3. So let's look at the first way to map fixtures on the workspace. That would be taking them from the library. So looking at the camera feed here, we have a nice setup with some Fatron, Skeptron, Dotron, and a MVR Pixel and a MVR XIP. Now let's create this mapping. Good to know is right now for this example we'll just be mapping on a blank canvas, but you actually do have the option to import a background image. So this would be a drawing or a picture of your show. You can then import it into the P3 as a background and map fixtures onto the drawing or on the picture. This is covered in an advanced video, but really good to know that we do have this option. So let's start by mapping what we have created here. So we need to start with some Fatrons. I start with address number 1, long Fatron. It needs to be rotated. Really good to know is that R is a shortcut on the P3 to rotate a fixture 90 degrees. So really good to know. So we start with the first Fatron here. Now it's in multi-mode, which is the button here, which means I keep adding fixtures as I click. If I disable it, I will just add a fixture one by one, and then I need to go back to the library. It just depends on how you want to work. So I have a second line of Fatrons underneath. Of course, we do have copy and paste. And now I have these two blocks already there. And now I continue with some of these Skeptrons. Start with the long ones. Once again, R for rotate. I have 6 of those. Oh, let's put it in multi-mode. Then I can just keep adding fixtures as I click. So one more, one more, one more, one more. And then we have the short Skeptrons here in the middle. Let's place them there. Good to know at this point, we also have an alignment tool. So if you select fixtures, you can basically align them vertically, and now they will all be on a straight line. I could do the same here. Align them vertically, and maybe do the same for that line as well. Align vertically. Now the next thing we need to add are the video Dotrons. Let's start them at address 101. So I have a bunch of them here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And some more here. If I would want to clean this up, I can once again also use the alignment tool here to align them vertically, and I get it all cleaned up nicely. The last thing, looking at my setup here, is the MVR PXL. On the left, let's start that one at address 201. And the MVR XIP right next to it. So now I've created my layout. Of course, in bigger shows you do, of course, have the option to create groups. So I can select fixtures, put them in a group. Now I have the option to rotate that group. I can also label the group as well. So I can say this is stage right. And then here in my fixture overview, we'll see all these fixtures in the stage right group. So you do have some options to keep your show file nicely structured. But let's not go too deep into that right now. So once you've created your map, you're happy with your map. This, of course, is something you could do offline at home. So you could create your map on the laptop before and then load it to a real machine later. And now the next step is to connect the actual fixtures to the show file. So I've plugged in my P3 network port. I can verify that I have a good connection by using the light all button. So as I click light all, the fixtures light up one by one in test patterns to make sure they are seeing the P3. So now I've connected everything. You will see that some fixtures that I've connected have already joined the workspace fixture, so they went green, so there's an actual fixture behind the fixture on the workspace. This might be confusing in many cases, so usually what I recommend when you use this workflow is to use the renumbering tool and bump all the fixtures offline. This will basically take all the fixtures and throw them away from the network, give them all an address that is not used by a fixture on the workspace. So now all the fixtures are here, but they're all orange because no physical fixture is linked to them. So once you've done that, you use the quick addressing tool. The quick addressing tool is an extremely valuable tool to link fixtures on the network with actual fixtures on the workspace. The way this works is really simple. A fixture lights up in white, like this dotron in the bottom row here. I just need to click it on the P3 to tell it, hey, that's you. Once I click it, it will automatically get addressed, turn green, and be ready. So now it's this Fatron lighting up in white. I click it, and then it automatically joins up with the actual Fatron in the show file. So you just look which fixture is lighting up in white, and any fixture that lights up, you just find it on the workspace and click it, and then it automatically gets addressed. So no manual entering of an address number or anything, just quick addressing. You just click whatever fixture is lighting up on the stage, and then it automatically gets addressed to that point. And you see also here, as I keep adding fixtures, you also see the active pixels is increasing. So more and more pixels are being added to the show file. And then just the XIP. And now you will see that here on Discover devices, everything is gone. And now all the fixtures are green because they all have an actual physical fixture on the network associated with them. So everything is green here, which is also reflected here in the bottom corner, showing that all devices on the network, all devices in the show file have been joined and are online. So you can also see that the active pixels and the mapped pixels are identical. So everything on the network is fully online. So you're ready to go. Your mapping has been done in this two-step process. Take them from the library, create your map, which is something you can do offline, and then later on plug the network in and use quick addressing to associate real fixtures with fixtures on the workspace to get your show up and running. So the second way of getting fixtures onto the workspace is to do it directly here from the Discover devices. So this method only works if you already are connected to the network with the actual fixtures there. So this is not something you can do offline at home and prepare for. This is more the quick and dirty way of mapping with fixtures live on the network. So the first thing I always do is use the Light All button, which is located here, which will light up all the fixtures in red, green, blue. This is a good confirmation that all the fixtures are connected on the network. They're all seeing the P3 signal. So typically during build-up, it's good to have Light All on, so any fixture that's plugged into the network immediately starts responding. So the first thing we need to do when we start dragging fixtures to the workspace is make sure they all have a unique number, because every fixture on the P3 needs a unique number. They might come from different jobs before, so some of them might have the same number. The easiest way around this is to renumber all the Discover devices. When I hit that, all the fixtures here will get a unique number. So then you can start dragging them onto the workspace. The first tool that is very useful here is the highlight. This will essentially just highlight every fixture as you select it. So it's very easy to see which fixture you're handling at any given moment. So let's get started. So that would be the dotron here in the bottom. Next one is the Fatron here. Once again, shortcut R for a rotation. The dotron above it. Another Skeptron. Once again, let's rotate it. Let's zoom in a little bit more. A dot above it. And then another Fatron above it. Never forget R for a quick rotation. Really, really useful shortcut to be aware of. And then you just keep adding fixtures one by one as you highlight them on the network. So you continue this way. And now we're going to the right half. Put some skeptrons here. And once again, as explained earlier, you can still use the alignment tool to make sure they're all nicely aligned so you can clean up your mapping. And the nice thing here is that even if you select multiple fixtures, the highlight function still works across multiple fixtures as well. So let's align it vertically. Yeah, so you can just clean up your mapping like that. Just two more fixtures, which would be the PXL here in the bottom and then the XIP right next to it. So once you've mapped it all out, it's good to be aware of the different view modes that we offer here. So far we've always been mapping on a blank background. We also have the option to map onto a background image, which isn't here because we've not imported one, but this is really useful for a picture or a drawing of your show, and then you map straight onto that. And the last viewing mode is the video input. This is where you see the incoming video and the fixtures right onto it, and you can actually still map fixtures around. Let's disable the highlight and then map them straight onto the video. So this is really useful if from the video input you're getting a reference image and you want to hit specific points on that image, you can just map straight onto the video image. Good to know some more advanced things here on the moving head products. They all have a scale slider allowing you to scale up the fixture, and in video you will then see that it grabs pixels from a larger surface. So this creates a lot more dynamics within the fixture, so you do have the option to scale a fixture to make it grab more or less video surface. You can even scale it down to a single pixel so that all the LEDs in that fixture, they all grab the same video, so you just get one color within the fixture, no pixelation. A second very useful thing for moving heads is the mirror tool. This basically flips all the pixels 180 degrees. So this is really useful if you're rotating a fixture, projecting onto a wall to make the mapping correct from that perspective. So it allows you to mirror all the pixels in the fixture. Last thing that multi-layer moving heads like a MVR Pixel and a MVR XIP offer is the split function. This basically splits the fixture in two layers. So one would be here on the left, the 19 main LEDs, and then the ARA backlight with the 141 small LEDs is a separate fixture now. So you can actually map them onto separate layers of video on the P3 controller. So really, really useful if you want to do more advanced things and not run the same on the beam and on the backlight of the fixture. Then useful to have on the P3 as well is the built-in test patterns. First one is the device number. So device number will actually write the number on the bigger fixtures where there's enough pixels to do it. On the smaller fixtures, it will just draw an arrow and then indicate pixel 1 with a blue dot, as you can see here. And actually here we do already see an issue, because if you look at the camera feed, the Phaetron is number 1 pixel in the real world is bottom left, and here on the map it's top right. So I would just rotate, and now what I'm doing on the P3 maps correctly with the real fixture. And I think the skeptrons here, they have the same issue. They're also rotated wrongly, RR, and now the pixel number 1 on the P3 corresponds with the pixel number 1 on my camera feed, so my mapping is done correctly. So device number, really useful test pattern to have running to make sure all your mapping is done correctly. We have some more advanced, not really advanced, but some more test patterns like just your solid colors or color bars, also really good to get your fixtures aligned. But by far the most useful there would be the alignment bar, which allows you, and you can have this as a moving bar, or you can just manually move it across. You can change the width of the bar, you can change the angle of the bar. But this is really useful to scan across your workspace and see that on the real fixtures, the line is a straight line. If it's not, it means your fixtures are not mapped correctly, so you can make small corrections while at the same time moving your bar across the workspace and making sure that the mapping is correct so that the line on the real world is correct. So you can just manually correct fixtures slightly left and right, and you will immediately see how that reacts on the actual fixture out there. So really nice tool to make sure that they're all lined up correctly, this alignment bar. You might have noticed that for all the test patterns we have normal test patterns and we have test patterns with DMX override. This essentially means that every fixture, like a moving head that has a dimmer channel or a shutter channel with test pattern with DMX override enabled, it will just override whatever the rest of the fixture is doing. So you do not need to go to the console and open the dimmer. It will automatically output the light from that fixture right away. So you're not, you don't need to run back and forth to the lighting console. Test pattern with DMX override enabled will just output video or test patterns from the fixtures regardless of where they are right now with their DMX. So really useful tool to have as well. So the next view we will be setting up is the video input view, which is the second view here on the P3 controller. Bear in mind that the video input view is optional. So if you are only running your fixtures with DMX, ArtNet or streaming ACN into the P3 and not running it with video, you can happily skip this, this view. If you will be running a video feed from a media server or VJ software, this is where you configure it. So the first thing you do is select your source. So on this particular machine I have an HDMI and an NDI input source, but on different machines you have a different selection of inputs. When you're working with HDMI or DVI as an input, don't forget to set up the edit. So this is where the P3 controller tells the source, so the media server, what resolutions it's willing to accept. So I've now set it 1920 1080 times at 60 Hertz, which means it forces the media server to only output me that resolution at that frame rate. Once you've selected your source, you have your image manipulation slider, so your typical saturation, brightness, contrast settings, so you can tweak your video signal to look better on the fixtures. And then very important in the video input view is your view modes, which are located here. Right now we're in a whole frame, so you just see the full incoming video signal. We also have whole frame with fixtures overlaid. This is where you see the full video, but also where the fixtures are, and you see the mapping on the fixtures. There's two versions. There's the live version. In live version, any fixture that's connected on the P3 controller will show the video. Any that is not connected will show as black here. So that's really useful to say, hey, these fixtures aren't there. They're not connected on the network. The offline version, however, renders the video on all the fixtures. So this is really good for previs. It just shows you everything, even if you do not have a single fixture connected. Similarly, we have the fixtures only view. This is only showing the fixtures, so it gives you a more realistic representation of how the image will look across your fixtures. And also there we have an offline mode, which does essentially the same, but does not require the fixtures to be connected. The last two modes are displaying the video on the fixtures on a background image. So if you've imported a CAD drawing or a picture of your setup, the fixtures will be mapped on that and the video will be mapped on that. So that gives you kind of a realistic preview of how it will look on your stage or building. Once again, on importing a background image and using that, we have an advanced training video. So once you have that set up, you have three big blocks here. Viewport, which is basically a cropping tool to cut your image to fit your fixtures. We have a scaling tool that allows you to scale the video to fit your fixtures, and offset basically allows you to offset the video versus your fixtures. Of course, you can use a combination of those three parameters as well. So let's start with viewport first. So let's say, hey, I want to cut like 1200 pixels away on the right. You see right away that it cuts away a big block. I could do the same in the bottom. I could say, hey, I want to have 600-700 pixels gone. It just recuts the image to your region of interest. Very similarly, we have the scaling view. We have a useful lock to viewport here that keeps your aspect ratio. And I might say, hey, I want something of 400 pixels wide. And then I can, using the offset parameter here, I can just drag it over the fixtures. And now it's mapped. Now it's scaled and offset to match my fixtures. All of these settings can be stored in presets. So let's record a preset here, which would be HDMI scaled. And you have some masks here. The masks determine what you store in the preset. In this case, I only want the video input configuration, so only these parameters here to be stored in the preset. There is some more information you can store into presets. We do have an advanced training video if you want to learn more about what other parameters that can be stored into presets. So this is my first preset. I can now go back and unscale everything and make a second preset, which would then be HDMI unscaled. Also this, it's only video input settings. So now I can very easily toggle between the different presets or mappings you've created. Nice thing to know is that these presets can also be triggered from a lighting desk as well. So you can on the fly change between different scalings or even between different sources. So if you need HDMI for part of the show and an NDI feed for another part, all of that can be stored in presets which you can then recall from the lighting desk. So yeah, that's how the video input works. Good to note here as well, you also have the global screen settings, so that's your global brightness of all your fixtures and your color temperature of all fixtures. These have a global control as well. Bear in mind that color temperature and brightness, they have a global control, but as soon as you patch them to DMX from the lighting desk, that overrides whatever you do here. So this is only if you're not doing DMX control, then you have a global control here. So that's how the video input view works. So the next step on the P3 controller is mapping DMX controls, which is here in the third main view. Bear in mind that mapping DMX controls is fully optional. If you will be running the fixtures only with video, you can heavily skip this step, just run video into fixtures, no DMX control needed. In the DMX and motion view, you will find the light controls and the motion controls. Light controls are what we are focusing on today. This allows you to control the dimmer, intensity, color temperature, all of that via DMX. Motion controls is for more advanced applications where you use DMX to move fixtures across the canvas from a lighting desk or an automation system. This is covered in an advanced training video. The first thing you can patch on the P3 controller to DMX is the P3 controller itself. So not any of the fixtures, it's the machine itself. When you patch that, you have from the lighting desk control over freeze, blackout, and running any of the test patterns from the lighting desk. Recalling presets, as we saw earlier in the video input, you can now recall the presets from the lighting desk or changing the global color temperature. That's the global parameters that you control by DMX if you patch the P3 itself. But let's now look at how you patch individual fixtures and what you can control in that way. Let's first look at mapping DMX controls for fixtures without a P3 mix channel. So this would be fixtures like a video Skeptron, a video Vetron, or an exterior PixLine. First thing to notice when you patch fixtures to DMX is that you can patch it on a fixture level, so you can select fixtures and patch them one by one, or you can select groups. So if you have a very basic setup and you just want 2 groups of fixtures to be controlled from the lighting desk, you can also patch on group level. But for this example, let's just start with these 6 Skeptrons. So you select the fixtures and then you add controls to it. For this fixture you have 5 different modes. The first one is P3 intensity. This just gives you on the lighting desk with Bjorn a dimmer channel to control the intensity of that fixture, so the intensity of the video on that fixture. RGB, very similar, controls the intensity of the colors of the video on that fixture, and then basic is a combination of the previous 2, intensity and colors of the video on a fixture. So those 3 first modes are only relevant when you have video running into the fixtures and you want to control intensity and or colors of that video. Then we get to the more interesting modes. The hybrid mode would be the first one. This fixture, this mode gives you an intensity channel to dim the fixture, but also a very useful P3 switch channel. So this channel, as we will demonstrate later with Bjorn, allows you to toggle the fixture between showing video and showing DMX pixel data from the console. And then the last mode is Pixel Map. Pixel Map completely ignores the video signal and just maps DMX ArtNet or streaming ACN straight onto the pixels of the fixture. But let's do hybrid for this example. In hybrid mode, as mentioned earlier, you get intensity, a P3 switch to toggle between video and DMX, and then a repetition of RGB channels. And that repetition you can actually define in two different ways. Maybe you want to explain this, Bjorn?
Yeah, so you can choose between either having pixels per segment, which is basically how many pixels per segment of the fixture do you want to do, and that's your maximum is single pixel control and your minimum is the whole fixture as one. And then you have segments per fixture, and that is then a more coarse selection, so you can do basically as many segments as you like per fixture, but make an educated guess on how many channels you have left in your lighting console to use them.
Yeah, so maybe for this example, we'll just go with 10 segments per fixture, which essentially means that the Skeptrons are split in 10 blocks of pixels, which means he gets on the console 10 times RGB for this fixture. So 10 segments will go on streaming ACN. I believe you set it up for streaming ACN?
Yes, streaming ACN, Universe 1 and start address 101.
Yeah, I'll go for that. And then we'll patch them on consecutive channels. So I've now patched it on the P3. So how are we doing on the console, Bjorn?
So on the console, if you look at the patch view here, I've got my video Skeptron 10-1000 in P3 hybrid 10 segment mode using our nice GDTF files from the GDTF share. And then they're all good to go. So hopefully you see some incoming signal.
Yeah, so the good thing here on the P3 is in the top left corner, you have the Receive Protocol Status button. This brings up a dialog where you see DMX, ArtNet, Streaming ACN, and K2. Any of the external protocols coming into the P3, you see their status. So yes, on Streaming ACN, we've patched some stuff on Universe 1, and it's active, so I'm receiving the feed from Bjorn. I can dive a little deeper and switch from the patch mode to the live values mode. Here I actually see for each DMX channel what the console is sending to me. So maybe we can start with an effect, Bjorn?
Yeah, as you see here, I'm running an effect from a cue list, but I've also prepped some groups in here for my controls. So I've got a Skeptron 1000 main group, which is then giving me a dimmer control. And under Gobo on this console, could be under video, could be under Beam on different consoles, you have a play mode where you can choose between DMX and video. So we'll start with just DMX control, and as you see on the fixtures, they're doing an effect, but if I change this effect to a little bit more coarse or steppy effect, so to make it more obvious, we can look in the P3 screen or on the actual fixtures what's happening.
Yeah, and the nice thing really is if you have DMX controls coming into the P3, in your preview screen on the P3, you actually see those DMX controls in action. So you see, hey, now it's pixel mapped from the desk, and if Bjorn would now go back to video, now you see the fixtures playing video as well. Now let's go back to DMX effect, where we were. You see the effect running. The one thing you might notice here is because some of the fixtures are hanging 180 degrees rotated, which you often see in the real world, right, Bjorn?
Yeah, because sometimes you hang them whichever way is easiest to connect them, and then sometimes that's opposite ends.
But we have a really nice feature for this, and that's on the patch we have PixelFlip. This basically allows you to rotate how the DMX channels are mapped to the pixels. I think here I just need to flip every second fixture.
Yeah, it looks like it.
Yeah. And now the effect is running in the same direction. So PixelFlip, really handy tool to correct mismatched controls on the lighting desk.
Yeah, and then if we want to expand it a bit more, I can then stop my effect by turning off the effect and then go into full video mode. So now I'm showing the video, but then I prepped a little temp button here on the console where I'm bumping to white on DMX, meaning I'm just overriding the incoming video with white on DMX for strobes or for hits in the music, just showing how easy it is to work with the switch channel.
Yeah, and this is really, really cool. The last thing you might want to know about this is that we also have a disable controls button here on the toolbar. This basically disables any DMX input to the P3 controller. So if something goes wrong with what you're getting from the lighting desk, if you disable the controls with that button, the fixture will just revert to purely showing video, completely ignoring whatever's happening on the lighting desk. So that's a really nice lifesaver if they're rebooting the console or still working on it. You can just have them running in pure video mode as well. So there you go. So let's now look at how you map DMX controls to fixtures with a P3 mix channel. This would be products like a Macra PXL, Macra XIP, or any of the newer Martin fixtures. The patch process is very similar, so you select one or multiple fixtures here, and you select Add Controls. In the DMX mode, you will find the list of all the DMX modes of that fixture, so it corresponds one-to-one to what you see on the patch on the console. Same DMX layout, nothing different there, so I'll just patch them in basic mode here. So basic mode is the mode on the fixture without any pixel control from the lighting desk, so just a limited number of channels. The one thing to realize here is that even if you put a fixture in basic mode without pixel control on the DMX side of things, in terms of video from the P3, it always maps every pixel individually. So despite that on the console you don't have any pixel level control, video-wise, all the pixels in the fixture will be treated as individual pixels, so you can still do pixel level effects with the video part of things. So it's a great way of saving DMX channels on the console side of things, but still have nice pixel level effects on the video side of things. So let's put it on streaming ACN. I believe it was on Universe 1, address 1 here.
Yes, streaming ACN 1.1.
Okay, I'll put it there. So I've now patched the fixture, so now you have full control from the lighting desk, Bjorn.
Yeah, and as you see, the fixture started moving as soon as it was patched. That means it's receiving the signal from the console. And I've prepared a few cues, with the first cue being the main beam just turned on in yellow, just a full solid brick of light coming out in yellow. And then I've got a P3 mix channel under video on this console. As said before, it can be on the gobo, can be on the beam, just check with your library file. If I'm now crossfading up the P3 mix channel towards video mode, you see the pixels come alive and they're starting to do the same video content as is running on the Skeptrons and Fatrons in the background. So full pixel level control through P3, even though I'm in basic mode. And that's true for the main beam. And then, of course, I can also do the same on the aura part, where I'm now turning it on in red with DMX control, and then crossfading up the P3 mix channel, and then I'm getting a quite high resolution from the 141 background pixels, and then it's blending in nicely with the background LEDs as well on the Skeptrons and Fatrons in the background. So with this I can of course crossfade back as easily to DMX as well, so I don't have to do video the whole time or do DMX the whole time. I can do a nice mix between whenever it suits.
Yeah, so this gives you, Bjorn, a lot of control from the lighting desk, whether you want to control the fixture with colors and patterns from the lighting desk, or if you want to run video through it, you just, on a cue by cue basis, can crossfade or flip and switch between the two options of driving the pixels. So this way of driving the fixtures gives a lot of flexibility. You really get the best of both worlds from the video and from what you can do on the lighting desk. The last key view on the P3 system controller is the live view, which can be found here behind the play icon. So this is the view where you would have your P3 controller during a show or an installation when it's up and running. This is mainly to monitoring an installation and to trigger presets. You can't do anything else here, it's mainly monitoring. So in the middle you see the incoming video and how it's mapped to the fixtures on the workspace. If a fixture would be disconnected or go offline, it will also show black here. So it's really helpful to diagnose where there is a problem in your system. On the left-hand side, you have the logging view. This is where any event that's happening will be logged. So fixture being disconnected, reconnected, fixture overheating, presets being triggered, all of that will show up in the log here on the left. And in the bottom, you have your preset pool, where you can trigger the different presets that you've stored on the P3 previously. If presets would be triggered by DMX, you would also see them change here. The button highlight will follow accordingly. So as we saw earlier, I have one preset where the HDMI is scaled to fit my fixtures, another preset where it's HDMI full. I could have a different preset with an NDI video input selected, another preset with different mapping. So all of that can be stored in these presets, which are accessible here in the live view, as well as monitoring the entire system as it's up and running.
Thank you for watching this Getting Started video on the P3 system controller.
And surely check out the videos on the more advanced topics.
And make sure to join our P3 user group on Facebook.